Yeah, now we're now live streaming. Great. Hello, everyone. We still have some time to wait some more folks.
Cool. Just to confirm, do I have the right monitor set up? Because I'm showing the full screen of the presentation title slide, correct?
We can see the top of your browser.
That's what I thought. Okay, let me
That's
reshare.
it.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, just one URL stop.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, sweet.
Yeah, and yeah, we have everything up and running. I see the stream on LinkedIn as well. We have a lot of people there. That's nice. 52 people online on LinkedIn, and I see a lot of people joining us here. More than 40 now on Zoom. Okay, so almost 100 us online already, and it's like
how's it going,
still
everyone?
3 minutes before. Yeah.
You want to talk about the poll? Get people started on this before the time, Rick?
Let's wait till more people join.
Cool.
Yeah, let's wait a bit. We usually start at exactly right on time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, more than 100 of us. Okay. I see people connect basically from everywhere, from Cyprus, Belgium, a couple of my friends there. Hi, guys. We'll start soon, in 2 minutes. A lot of people, by the way. So we have 7,000 people who pretend to attend on LinkedIn. We will see how many of them will join, but I mean, that was great.
This is on LinkedIn Live?
Yeah. 80 people there.
Yep, streaming it live.
More than, streaming live. Nice.
I'm going to try a LinkedIn Live thing in a couple of weeks, because why not? See how it goes.
You got to be on your best behavior, Raj.
No, exactly the opposite. It'll be LinkedIn Live at 11:30 p.m. after 2 beers.
Not bad.
The real of cybersecurity.
There it is.
Yeah. Friday's Exploits Review.
What I really think. That's the quickest way to retire, I guess. The quickest way to force retirement.
All true. And by the way, thanks everyone who's sharing from where you connected. That's very important for us to know where you are. And special thanks for LinkedIn as a platform to host all of us here, and Zoom as a tool we are all using to connect with each other and share the stream. Okay, so it's 2 p.m. our time. I think that we can start.
I'll kick it off to Rick to begin the poll conversation, and then Ivan and I'll take it from there.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. This should be a fun topic. We're looking forward to this one. So just to start it off, we're going to start with a quick poll just to get everyone's interests and get an idea of kind of the reasons that people are joining this. So I'm going to throw this up, give it a minute to have people answer that, and then we're going to use this to help guide the conversation between Raj and Ivan to help make sure we're hitting the points that the audience is most interested in. So I'm going to launch that.
Yeah, we see the poll. Again, the poll is available only for people who connected via Zoom. The link for the Zoom available right inside the event. Join us here. If you basically,
So for those of you watching on LinkedIn Live, the link to the Zoom registration is within that. So feel free to register at some point during this, and you'll be afterwards you'll get an email with the slides and the recordings for you to keep and use for your own use. All right, so I will give the poll another roughly 10, 15 seconds. We're up to almost 60% of the Zoom participants answered. And we're almost split between the first two.
That's exciting. I'm happy there's a split there.
Yeah.
Hopefully I make
Looks like-
everyone go to one side of that split at the end of the presentation.
Yep. Okay, guys, it's more than 240 of us. 100 here on Zoom and 130, 140 on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Nice. A lot of
Here, I'm
people.
going to end the poll and let's get this started.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, let's go. So I have the poll numbers in front of me. We'll bring that up a little bit into the presentation. How's everyone doing? My name is Raj. We have Ivan here as well. And you are at the webinar titled API Security, 3 API First Paradigms Help Secure Your APIs. The other competing title to this was Take Solace in the Interfaces. I think I like that one a little bit more, and we'll get to that towards the end. So what are we going to talk about today? Quick intros to who I am, who Ivan is, and also a quick reminder to a presentation Ivan did a couple of weeks ago that inspired a lot of this talk actually. And I remember when I saw a very specific finding from that presentation, I was like, I need to think more about this and talk more about this. So we'll bring that up. We'll do the presentation itself and have a lot of time at the end for Q&A. So again, who am I? If you've been to a Wallarm webinar before that I've been there, you've seen this slide at a very high level, pen tester back in the day, sec engineer inside at a couple of places, sec architect inside of some other places. And now I'm the suit. I'm a manager / leader in product, AppSec, SoftSec, that sort of stuff. I tend to work in organizations that are pre-IPO, but right about to go IPO, those hyperscale organizations. My career started not that long ago. So sec DevOps and DevOps were like the things. CI/CD was the expectation. These are the places I'm from. Ivan?
Okay, thanks, Raj. Yeah, I'm a security researcher and also now CEO of Wallarm, also like the manager kind of things. What's really unique and similar about us with Raj, so we all security experts. We know how to cook things, we know how does a real exploits looks like and how to protect against real things. I hope that it will help us to run the conversation today. And also want to mention that I was a black bug hunter, right? So now I'm not doing this, but I did a kind of success at time. And I just want to say hi for all the people who know me because of that practice and who joined us now, specifically Cyril from Cyprus and other folks. You're really welcome. Good to see you again, guys, here. Even now, if we're completely disconnected all over the world, we're still connected by the nature of the things. Let's start then.
Connected by ideas and interests. We will
All true.
solidify around that.
And this events and LinkedIn and Zoom and all this stuff and technologies we have in place and we have to protect.
I love it. All right, so let's dig into this. A couple of weeks ago, Ivan gave a presentation exploring publicly available vulnerability data and trying to tease out some findings that we may get from the advent of API first methodologies and thinkings and how it may have impacted vulnerability data. There was a talk, it was a couple weeks ago. We can look it up and find it. There was one finding in that talk that stood out to me. That finding was that in aggregate, as per Ivan's findings, the overall CVSS score didn't really increase. It just was what it was. But there was a very big increase in exploitability, the exploitability portions of the CVSS score. And I started thinking to myself, why would there be such a strong correlation between an increase in exploitability and the advent perhaps of API first paradigms in organizations that are building production technologies? Why was it presumably easier to exploit once a vulnerability was discovered post API first methodologies becoming advocated versus pre? And I started thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting, because as a development shop, as an engineering organization, when you decide to go on an API first journey, you're probably making that decision because you think something's going to be easier, something's going to be cheaper, something's going to be better. It seems like as a attacker, you were probably thinking the same thing for some reason. My job is going to become easier somehow. My job is going to become more profitable. My job is going to become more efficient. So now we have the builders and we have the breakers thinking that. And I thought to myself, why is it my default reaction as a builder of safe protector rather. So not a builder, not a breaker, but a protector. Why wasn't my default reaction API first? Yes, let's do this thing. And that's sort of the impetus of this conversation. So let's just dig into this a little bit now. But actually, before we get there, I'm looking at the poll results and I'm noticing there is a split. Like it's almost exactly down. There's 54 people who, when they think API first, thinks we're going to be speeding development up. And there is about 35% of us that says, nope, it's going to create new attack surface or increase workload or doesn't have an opinion. So about half of us thinks from the builder point of view, this is going to make life easier, perhaps. And the other other third of us thinks, nope, this is going to be really scary to us. I hope that at the end of this conversation, we can get more people to realize, understand how, as protectors, this potentially makes our lives easier. I guess before I go into anything, Ivan, do you want to add anything?
Oh yeah, so if you can switch back to the slide where the previous research, I just want to comment a couple of things. But first of all, there's my couple of insights about this. The first of all, API security as an industry and API as an ideology, it's not that new, right? We did 10 years overlook at all the exploits, and you will be surprised, but we started with this like very old-fashioned path traversal exploit that was detected more than 25 years ago or so. And nowadays we have the same path traversal exploits that attack the WSO2, very modern API gateway, exactly the same issue, exactly the same thing. So first of all, it's not as new as you might count that. At the same time, the detection stuff, the protocols and everything, the rest are completely new. And that's why we have to take care about that. And we have to seriously think about like how to basically make the things done. That's why we have the increasing the curve of exploitability of these issues. And I just want to highlight that we found during this deep analysis, by the way, we used vulnerable.com data to find all these API exploits and also bug bounty reports and all the rest of the security bulletin and knowledge bases. We found that we actually went up from a couple of exploits a week, API exploits a week, to almost 5 API exploits a day nowadays. So technically, every single day when you're not doing something related to API security, there is a 5 API exploits that basically coming out.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Like it was awesome data there. I look forward to your 10 years from now for the 20-year retrospective. Well, let's do this thing. All right. So before we get too far, let's just set some common wording here. So when we say API first, there's a lot of people think about this in very many different ways. When I'm thinking about API first as it relates to this conversation, what I'm really speaking to is this concept that can be adopted by the organization that you work in and that you're charged to protect, where this concept is, hey, as an organization who's building software, I want to adopt a couple of technologies and a couple of paradigms that make it easier for our developers to do work, that speeds up development, that makes it easier to decouple teams, decouple features, makes things more maintainable. And how are we going to do that? By adopting a technology suite that makes your feature development approach adopt APIs and make it so that your backends can be written with APIs, can be deployed with APIs, can be maintained by APIs, and decoupling from much of the user agent and the front end like development. That's what I think about API first. Like first, I think that. Then the very quick things, the technology that would be used to adopt it, and the technology is how you implement these philosophies. So just going there, let's just start the conversation. So if your organization is beginning an API first journey, there's, again, some decisions that your platform team, your infrastructure team, your developer architects are going to start to make. Presumably, let's just use 3 examples of places they're going to work in. It is very common in organizations about to deploy API first technologies. You're going to deploy something that's going to be specifying your API. That's not the code. So there'll be an API specification layer. It's very common that you'll be establishing a very rigid RESTful naming convention. So you're going to have a very opinionated stance on the HTTP verbs that you're going to be using and a very opinionated stance on how you traverse through your application. The first part of the URL represents a type of user. The next part of the URL represents a type of asset. The next part of the URL represents a type of action. There's going to be opinions there. And it's also very likely that you're going to be adopting a encapsulation protocol in your app layer to enable your clients and your services to communicate in a more expressive way than just parameters in an HTTP like post body. These are common ideas, and they tend to always be the first set of things you establish when you begin your API first journey. What does that kind of mean a little bit more specifically? It means you're adopting some new frameworks like Swagger or Thrift or Proto. It means you are now making Proto Buff and JSON like first-class citizens in your routing fabric and your request lookup fabric. It means that you now need to support put and delete, like entirely new verbs that you never thought you had to support before. These are all things that are happening, and these are all going to happen at the same time within the first couple of months of deploying an API first philosophy. That's scary, I think. I think we all believe that's scary. Is it scary for you, Ivan?
Yeah, Rich. I want to basically agree with everything and mention that even if your company or your organization found like the perfect way how to drive this APIs and like decided to start with a well-defined REST Swagger schema open API specs or protobuf, whatever, never mind if you were able to deploy this just one API protocol, you will easily find the complete zoo, complete full of other animals, because you have a Kubernetes, which basically introduced new API endpoints and all of them internal. You have to take care of your AWS or Google Cloud API endpoints, which is now part of your attack surface as well, and all the other technologies available because you want to do that. Even if you're using super modern DevOps software like GitLab, you can find easily GraphQL endpoint or even XML RPC endpoint or OSLP, something like that, very legacy stuff, because it's enterprise-grade software, even a DevOps world that introduced more and more and more API protocols. That's why the zoo of your real API protocols and inside the infrastructure is very, very various.
Shadow APIs, right? Like, I guess that's the terminology. And I guess as a quick aside, something to think about is as technology industries find solutions that really, really resonate and provides quick value to customers, those solutions will be selected for more and more quickly, and the adoption rates are like just exponentially compounding on each other. So as soon as like APIs became like a very good way for developers to make software, everything started having APIs. And then that's is a forcing function to having shadow things, which I hate the term shadow, honestly. It's like, it should be an expected thing. It's like, you should not have to feel that one entire team, your security team, knows everything. That's too old school, I think. We need to be able to understand that there's lots of people playing and there's lots of people doing things. And if it works, and it'll get adopted. That's a quick aside. That's another conversation for us. But going back here, scary. So as a quick reminder, again, an illustrative example here. We have specification layers. We have RESTful resource naming convention. So a lot of new verbs and a lot of new structure in the paths. And we have very expressive parameter definitions for things that were previously not very expressive. Scary. Why is it scary? Well, in addition to the fact that it's all new frameworks, each individual part of the API journey here is slightly scary for its individual reasons. API specification layers are scary because you have programmatic generators now of code. You tend to have like a non-human non-human actor making code for you to put into production. If that thing is bad, broken, bugged in any sort of way, it's a amazingly great amplification of bad things to happen. That's very scary. Not in addition to new frameworks. RESTful naming conventions being adopted strongly. Well, as an attacker and as a person who's offensively minded as a protector, you know that makes scraping a lot easier. It makes the ability of understanding from a black box point of view what to poke at, how to poke at it, way easier. It also screams IDOR. It screams like many different ways of not deploying authorization stacks and frameworks correctly to immediately lead to like data problems, IDOR problems. And now in terms of like more expressive encapsulation technologies, Generally speaking, the more expressive your encapsulation, the more likely it is deserialization attacks are going to screw you. And that is scary because those things can be very dangerous. Not the least of which is the more expressive your data can be, the more likely it is you turn data into control. You make the fact that a parameter exists in a body to make your controller do something vastly different than what it was written for. This is a thing that as an attacker, as a person looking for bugs, I look for very specifically all the time. If there's a JSON blob going into an endpoint that says, update my name, but I can pass it a JSON that has my name as well as, let's say, my email address, and I put some other email there, I look for stuff like that because when you have expressive data like that, you often have creative ways of using it. And like these are all things as defenders who are offensively minded, you immediately think about when you do API first. It makes you scared, and it speaks to the answer we had in the poll. Oh man, API first, all new attack surface. Anything else that scares you, Ivan, when you think about API first?
Yeah. I'm with you as everything here. So I just want to mention a couple of things. We now mainly explain the application layer, right, of APIs, my own business logic and stuff, and all these points are legit. However, we now, with this API first approach, also have another one layer that expose new attack surface, like frameworks, API controllers, API gateways, everything here. And I again mentioned that the recently, I mean, it's the serialization exploits is a good example, since we have, for instance, .NET, like Microsoft framework, that will understand the JSON in their own way with an additional serialization when you can put the basically dash object name inside the JSON key, and not your code for the .NET, but .NET itself will parse and sometimes cause remote code execution attacks and stuff like that. Or you can play with a type misconfigs and put, for instance, like the, I don't know, let's say true instead of username, or true, Boolean true, or array or object for the JSON field, let's say login or session name, and get authorized easily without any technically exploits, without that scary codes with the SQL injection and stuff, based on that knowledge of the framework, that the framework will they basically cast this object to different object. And if it's true, Boolean true, you logged in. And it happens here and there all the time, not only that application layer, but at the framework level, at the gateway level as well. That scares me a lot because I have no idea how to protect that if I'm like the defender. And I don't know how my developers can know that, because they can't be perfect and everything. My developers basically using frameworks, they never aim to secure this framework. It's not their job. And unfortunately, in real cases, in real infrastructures, we have the same problem here at Warren. We still have the Golang backends. We have a lot of different stuff, right? So we have to protect this API, technically transport layer and control layer somehow, using some kind of other security solution on the top of it, because otherwise, how?
And what's cool about that too is, before I get to actually what's cool about that, just to really sum it up, APIs make us all scared because we know when we were breaking first, we saw all the opportunity. There's all these places as breakers and as bug bounty hunters and people who just want to have a little fun on the internet. We know where we can go to find those mistakes. And like as defenders, our brain takes us there first. But as defenders, maybe our brain should take us somewhere else first. We should look for potentially opportunities. Why do I think we should look for opportunities? I'll just have the slide up. I'll speak to it in a sec. Let's go back to the very beginning of this presentation. We had a premise. I had a premise. People who are building production systems are excited about API first, which is why they embark on the journey. Why are they excited? They believe it'll make systems more robust, more reliable. They believe feature development will go faster. They believe code will be more maintainable. I also believe that as attackers, we think API first makes things a lot easier for us. There are interfaces that we can now more easily programmatically exercise. There are expectations and paradigms that we can now scope our understanding and scope our attack surface sort of discovery a little bit tighter, so we can like do our attacking stuff a bit easier. Very excited. Makes the attacker excited. Where are the opportunities that builders, protectors, where are those opportunities? Why are we not excited? Because I think we should be excited. Again, let's use these 3 illustrative examples here to help we motivate the why we should be excited. So we have an API specification layer. We presumably have a very, very rich data source that can feed our fuzzers, our static analyzers, our intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems at layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, and 7, let's say, with context that can make their job easier. We have the possibility of consuming Swagger and JSON on Thrift to make those tools smarter and more efficient. That's an exciting thing, I believe. We have the ability to quickly key off on attack surface deltas by looking at Git commit histories in the places that define our APIs. That's a reason, I think, to be excited as a protector. Why would RESTful resource naming conventions make us excited? It gives us an ability of summarizing expectations on our edge a bit better. We know that if you're on a /customer, you should always make sure that there is a session cookie coming in from the request. If you're in a /customer, you should always expect a decorator on that module to have authorization implementation. If you're on a /info, you know neither of those things are required. So now you can tune both your static analyzer and your WAF to be way more strict on /customer and not strict at all on /info. And now you can address maybe false positives and alert fatigue. Like, this is an exciting concept. This as a protector should make us all feel, oh, that makes our life easier. What is it about data encapsulation standardization should make us excited? Well, we don't have to rely just on grep anymore. There's a lot more structure in the request that can be understood by our runtime systems. That makes our runtime systems have the ability to deeply parse that request more efficiently at wire speed with less resources than may have been required if you had to have very, very complicated greps that would blow up and bring down your edge infrastructure. That stuff is exciting to me. I'm very excited about that. Why else am I excited? If you're using somewhat verbose encapsulation standards and protocols, you probably have a piece of middleware in your system that you can now have a place to implement input sanitization, like a really nice, clean place to do it. All these things make me excited. And I want to maybe after this, and I pass it to Ivan a little bit, explain why we may be missing these opportunities. Why did we by default didn't go here with that excitement? Ivan?
Oh yeah. So first of all, thanks a lot for this, all these points. I'm with you. And just a small joke. As a security vendor, I'm really happy to have all these opportunities in place, right? So we have to introduce all these tools and patterns and scanning, because unfortunately or fortunately for the commercial companies or startups, it's not that many of them, right? You can't find anything that works out of the box. There is nothing like that. And I have a good illustration for that. We decided to go with this open source API firewall. We basically run the small project, tiny proxy, very super performance proxy based on Golang and fast HTTP with just one feature: apply open API spec or Swagger, match rules on a request and response, and block request or report about requests that not match the rules based on Swagger. And this tiny project got 1 billion Docker pulls in like a couple of months after the release. It's available on Docker called API Firewall. You can easily download and bring it up. So it means that the demand of these tools is very high, and people know that they should do some kind of thing, but it's not that easy. The other thing that I want to highlight here is definitely we now need to integrate the security, and it's basically, by the way, native approach of the security movement itself. We are shifting left here and basically ask developers to introduce more and more security features right inside the application code, right inside business logic, make some hooks, make some kind of like locks better because of the serialization encapsulation. It basically allow us as a defender to focus developers on what does matter, and they can tell us, as it was like 20 years ago, it's your job, it's security, check this exploits on network level. We can't. You have to do something to deliver the security capabilities for us. If we want to block, let's say, attackers or intruders, we now can't do that by IP. You have to introduce this session and validation endpoint, some kind of session denial list somewhere in your database, and we can just use an API you will introduce to us, and we will apply all these wraps and funny stuff and worms on the top of it to ask your system to invalidate the session and basically block this intruder by session at a logic level, block accounts sometimes, block whatever gift cards if it's necessary during stuff like that. That's basically the good opportunity for us to focus developers on what does matter from the security standpoint, and as a result, make better code.
And what I'm going to also say is it's really good that we can focus and help the developers, but we can look to this to help ourselves too. Like, That's where I want us to go next. Like, what may be holding us back from making this the first thing that comes to our mind versus this? Why potentially do I say that lots of people in InfoSec space, when they think API first, these are the first things that come to mind, how we're going to get hacked, versus these are the first things that come to mind facing how I can be empowered by the API. Now, here's where I'm going to present some credential ideas, hard for me to defend, but I'll throw it out into the world and see if this resonates with people. I believe there's 3 really big things and 1 bonus thing that holds us back from thinking like this. I believe as an industry, we are a little bit more afraid to build things and deploy things into production and critical paths of the customers. I believe it is historically difficult, and we can try to be better at coordinating our roadmaps with platform teams and infrastructure teams and coordinating the building with ourselves together. I believe it's also the case that we are afraid to cause non-security incidents. We are afraid as an industry to cause production to go down, so much so that it potentially makes us too afraid to play in production. Build fast, break things, right? Like, I don't think we like to break things, perhaps, or not do the breaking that is not finding security bugs. And then the bonus one is, I believe if we start our journey to build things, to be better at incident response, or like operational incident response, that is, to start to build software engineering projects that are relatively large, I believe we run up against ourselves a lot. And we realize sometimes the requirements we put on the engineers and we put on to the builders feel really onerous. And we don't want to be presented with that feeling sometimes. I believe that's the case. And why do I believe that's the case? Because every single one of these bullet points I've personally experienced as I've tried to become a better, more prolific builder in the various stacks for my organizations, or ask my engineers to also be those things. And like, just to quickly go into all these sort of things, right? Like, one more time, I want us to say that as an organization, as an industry, we can build and deploy things to production. We are getting better and good at aligning our deliverable roadmaps with an infrastructure team's roadmaps, that we feel confident that, you know what, if we do bring out production, it won't be debilitating to our organization or use up too much political capital. And that when we are builders and we're following our rules, we're following how you're supposed to do code reviews, how you're supposed to make sure you do architecture reviews and write tests, and how you're supposed to deploy things, that we feel like that was actually not that painful. I'm okay providing that requirement on the developer because I was able to find it myself. These are the core things I think are holding us back from thinking like this versus thinking like this. So just to like sum it up, I guess no. What are your thoughts, Ivan? Think I'm being a little too lofty there?
I completely agree with you, to be honest. I completely agree with you. I just look at some questions, so we have to spend some time for Q&A as well, because I see a lot of technical questions like, what if I'll apply HMAC signature or each API request and stuff like that. So I think that we'll be able to find some time to basically explain, address them all. Okay, let's proceed with takeaways.
Cool. So, okay, we'll do this relatively quickly and go to some questions. So again, the key takeaways are, I believe these are our fears. I believe the takeaway here is, when our organization decides to go API first, do we feel that this thing is scary to us? Or are we thinking, great, we're doing API first. How is that going to help my security program, the security tools that are already in place? How is it going to help it become better? Where better generally means more efficient to run, a higher signal to noise ratio, or more abilities, more capabilities of detecting weird stuff. I think we need to think like that. I believe we have to ask ourselves that question, like, every single time, like, are we making our tools empowered by APIs and API first methodology and being improved? If we're not asking ourselves that, we're not able to point out just some specific implementation tweaks and details related to the fact that we went API first. What are we doing? That HMAC question is a really good example. You probably can now say, you know what, we can probably deploy an HMAC verification step if we're going to have some well-formed, structured JSON or proto, because we can canonicalize the request way easier, because we can canonicalize the request a lot easier. We can utilize existing HMAC like middleware to do the thing, versus having to implement essentially like the proper way of doing an HMAC. So those are the sorts of things I'm thinking about. Again, to sum it up, if we're going API first, do we feel like it's helping us out? If so, find some examples where you think it is helping us out. If it's not, let's revisit how we're solving the problem. So the how, like how do you do this? How do you even start doing this? Well, the way I think about starting to do this, if especially there's none of this happening, it's addressing the fears first. Don't necessarily address the API problem. Let's address our fears first and build some of these intuitions in this culture. How do you address some of these fears? Well, for building things, just build things. Maybe don't build something that's in the critical path of your production customer user base just yet, but look for some asynchronous flows that you're doing in your team already. If you have an InfoSec team that's doing ad hoc pen tests, you probably have, as part of that pen test, a recon phase where you go and you peruse a couple of very popular repos internally, and you run a couple of like scanners and spider like scan scripts in the first like couple of hours of your pen test. Go and turn that into a tool that someone can run for the command line and output like a piece of data that can feed into downstream stuff. Just start building, and also use the tools in your organization to build. Use your version control systems. Make sure you write tests that are like supported by your testing teams, that sort of stuff. Just do that. How do you address a fear around the coordination? Well, do a coordinated project with an infra team, but also think about the type of project that will be more successful. A type of project that I find to be a first good, successful partnership with your infra team is one that improves the existing infra and golden path in a way that attracts more customers internally to use that platform. As a quick, like to set the stage, generally speaking, what I've seen is many organizations have an infrastructure team that has a golden path. There's not a strong requirement to utilize the golden path. It's just heavily encouraged. And the infra teams really try hard to keep making the golden path better and better and better to encourage more and more people and get more and more customers onto this platform. Join them on that journey. Find something that is security adjacent and say, I'm going to build that with you. We'll line up and we're going to deploy that thing. That helps you deploy something in infra stacks, partner with your infra folks, and get some trust and bridge building done there, breaking things. I don't recommend going out there and purposely breaking things, but prepare for when things break. Make sure that you're very confident you and your InfoSec team understand how logging works in your stack, how metrics and alerting works in your stack. Make sure that the tools that are in already the critical path to your customers are being monitored by your team. And then tabletop, not just security incidents, but operational incidents. Tabletop a situation perhaps where a security engineer deploys a WAF rule that blocks a third of legitimate traffic and a development team finds it before the security team. Run that tabletop. Build the muscles that your development organization are building to be able to deal with incidents, but within the InfoSec team. That's going to help. And then fear of discovering oneself, you need to deploy something into production and see how it feels. Do you feel that the process of deploying to production is something that you can do? And if not, what is the parts of the security requirements that may make that difficult? And to be very specific, I found that a really good first couple of things deploying to production are log lines. They're generally low impact. They get you to do the full end-to-end development flow that is in your organization. And it's going to be amazingly awesome because you can decide what features are limited on signals that you would want. And before I pass it to Ivan, just to like highlight, like, why do I think all of those very specific things are important? Like very specifically, why do I think it's important? I think when you build things, you build a mindset of automation. When you coordinate things, you build bridges and you build trust with partners. When you break things or prepare to break things, you build internal confidence in your team to keep building. You also build external trust that if you break something, you don't expend too much political capital. And when you deploy things into production, you experience the API first flow in your organization. And if you did all those three things, once you start experiencing the API first flow in your organization, you are now ready to find gaps and start to fix things and use the API first technologies to fix things you find. That's, by the way, the three takeaways I want to present. You may think those three takeaways were those were like these: API specification layer, RESTful, blah, 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 data encapsulation. No, that's just three things that are illustrative. The real value here is build things, coordinate, break things, feel happy, the bonus, feel happy about what you put into the development flow, deploying to production. Ivan.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. So I first of all, I again want to agree with everything and just want to highlight and probably share some kind of practice specifically related to how it's important to have something in production and don't just focus on staging environments and stuff. And, you know, like I run, I don't know, a couple of hundreds different consultancy projects like pen tests and whatever since like 2009 or so. And I mean, I can't even count how often we heard from the customers the same story all the time. We presented the bug, like let's say race condition or either or whatever, and they said, you know what? So we did a lot of job to find such kind of issues in our staging environment. We never ever found stuff like that. Unfortunately, you found it during the pen test. And I said, like, you know what's the difference? Hackers and attackers and pen testers will never aim to hack your testing environment, the staging environment. We're not even close to do that. The only reason is just to focus on production environment, and you have to implement all the controls. And when we're speaking about real issues, specifically very sophisticated, complicated issues, we're not only talking about an entry point, but also the whole exploitation path to the, let's say, the access to the private data or something like that starts from, let's say, the very basic bug like XSS or whatever. And in real cases, all of this just multiplied by real systems, real implementations, amount of the backends or whatever, amount of load balancers. And I mean, if you ever try to exploit race condition in real time or in real life, you know what I'm talking about, right? So it's just impossible to make a right staging environment for the right race condition, try to achieve the same in production. Then no way, it's completely different issues. The production is different, and you can test your, let's say, normal use cases. Unfortunately or fortunately, security bugs, they are all not normal. It's not normal use cases in a lot of the cases. And definitely you can stop a lot of threats and find a lot of bugs, but you have to have something in place, in line or out of band, right, to protect your production. It's not only for DLP or data breach, but also to incident response and stuff like that. That's just very important, and I think that a lot of security folks will join me in this opinion. And some other thing that I want to cover here. So I usually recommend to start, and again, like that came from my pen test and consultancy practice as well. I usually recommend to start with forget about infrastructure, forget about APIs, forget about everything. Start just with the data. Let's say my company is doing whatever. I'm storing the customer's data, like PII data. Where I'm storing that, which services manipulate with the data, how, what else, who guarantee the, let's say, integrity of the data, who guarantees that the data couldn't be modified somehow out of band of the normal usage or somehow by direct manipulation with the database and stuff. Once you start to think about data, all the other concepts about APIs, infrastructure, VLANs, ACLs, it just makes super easy for you because you know that here is my PII, here is my controls for the PII, here is my authentication system, here is control for the authentication system, there is user and stuff like that. The data is the key. We're all here because of the data, right? No data, no internet, no security, no everything, right? And the data is just the key. Once you start to split your data by different categories and stuff, all the rest of the things became much easier, including API security.
I think that's an interesting idea. Like, one thing that comes to mind is when you start with the data, the thing that helps figure out then how to focus your effort is then, like you mentioned, knowing how that data is going to be manipulated and being accessed, and being confident you understand like the flow to the data. And something that really helps you understand the flow to the data is by operating on the data. I think
exactly.
You have to know, you have to be able to operate on the data, or else if all you're doing is trying to discover how one operates on the data from the outside, you only rely on the offensive mindset and not any of the building mindset. There's going to be huge parts of your API and your stack and your processes that you're blind to, and you will never either see as an attack surface or a place that makes your protective approaches easier to do. And like, that seems interesting to me. I need to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, just for sum up, I mean, you are a kind of data first, even if you're not API first, right? That's why once you decide to, as a company or individual or whatever, decide to go API first, and you don't know about the data you have to analyze, the data you have to transfer to your partners, the data that you have to produce, I don't think that it's the right way to start right from like designing APIs and stuff, because the data is everything. You data first, and then API is based on data. API is just like the new way to access the data faster, let's say, much easier than it was before, in unified way, you can apply
Which
more
is why
controls in this
exploitability
API.
goes up, because you make it
Exactly.
easier to access the
Exactly.
data.
Exactly. And like all the things happens related to the data. The data is the core, and all this, even this things that you mentioned before about the namings, right? Or API specs. I mean, look inside API specs. You will find data there, the definitions of data, the definitions of like how to use the data and stuff like that, and everything about that. And APIs is just like the good idea, the other one, let's say, angle of how to look at the data. And I think that that's the best control. By the way, that's a good example of building, let's say, API infrastructure to ask your NOC network guys to look at that. And they will start with exactly the same. They will forget about API. There is my ACL, there is my VLAN, this is my DNZ, and they will apply exactly the same rules that never change for like 30 years, 20 years, 40 years, and they will get pretty significant results using the same stuff, because like the concepts, how to protect the data and how to arrange data to buckets and how to put the borders on some kind of controls never change. What exactly changes the ways how to parse this data, how to make better borders, better controls, and better, let's say, access lists or denial lists. And nowadays it's based on sessions or custom JSON fields. But on the top of that, exactly the same ideas, right? And your NOC's pretty good at that, by the way.
Yep. Love it. So just to sum it up before we drop into a Q&A, at least my very specific guidance is don't be afraid to build things, coordinate with your infrastructure and networking teams essentially to improve and work at what we consider the API first technology, whoever's working on those sort of things. Don't be afraid and prepare for breaking things and deploy to prod. Do those things, experience your API first development processes, understand how your organization is using APIs to manipulate the data, touch the data, and then figure out what is the easiest way to then use those same technologies and paradigms to improve your protective and detective and responsive technology stacks. Or as Ivan just said, like there's philosophies where you put up boundaries, you figure out where those boundaries exist, you set detections, or you block certain things crossing those boundaries. I'm not saying like go back to like a perimeter model, but the idea is you are looking for places that you can make summarization calls to make decisions more efficient. And when you do API first technologies, that is happening already to make your developers' job easier. There are definitely going to be places where you can be creative and find how it can make your job easier. So
yeah, the perimeter point is pretty good. I just want to like sign the same petition of the perimeter. And by the way, so if we will apply the, I don't know, 25 years old network guide on the current APIs, we will instantly get this super, let's say, the very famous marketing point now that there is a no perimeter for your APIs, because if it's in the public API in the public network like internet, basically your perimeter is everywhere, and it's easy get like easy pick from this. Let's say very old-fashioned 25-30 years old network concept applied to real life and real APIs, right? If you want a public API, you have to connect all the rest of the world to your network perimeter and try to protect all of them, which is impossible. That's why we're all here.
I love it. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing so we can all see each other. And maybe, because there's questions probably all over the place, I'll ask maybe Rick to throw questions our way based on what you were seeing.
Yep. So first question I got is, what are some best practices to secure my APIs if I'm 100% cloud native API world?
Cool. I'll answer that in a couple of ways. One way is I'll be as in the weedsy as possible with making a lot of assumptions, but hopefully it'll motivate some stuff. When you tell me 100% API first cloud native, what comes to mind is you're using a cloud API gateway somewhere. So let's imagine something like a Kong that is deployed in front of something like EKS or Lambdas, or some sort of Google App Engine type thing. So all your logic is very microservice-y. I'm assuming you're fronting your cloud gateway with other support technologies like a WAF and a CDN, and you have capabilities of doing some things there. And I'm assuming you have also good DevOps experience when you're 100% cloud native, so that you have strong PR processes, everything is in for as code. I'm making all these assumptions. Now, why am I making all these assumptions? Because one, I think it's important that that level of understanding is had by whoever answers that question. If it's me, if it's you, if it's your security engineering team, you need that level of understanding, because that level of understanding is going to be like, it is more efficient to put requests parsing and input validation, let's say, in Kong, because you can consume the Swagger and then immediately block on things that to the open source project that Ivan mentioned, immediately block things that deviate from that. Boom, drop that stuff in there. It is also then the assumption that part of your PR process, anytime there's a change to an API specification, that can be determined statically. So you're going to kick off an architecture review process internally, so that for a cloud native API first group, you only do architecture reviews whenever you tweak an API, but backend API stuff, you make them not required. You, in that environment, will make sure that your WAF is tuned. Don't just throw up your WAF and forget about it. You have to explicitly tune the WAF to be aware of routes and make your WAF more sensitive to 401s on authenticated endpoint pathways and less sensitive on 401s to non-authenticated endpoint pathways. That's how I would answer this question. Like, those are some examples of things to do, but you can't answer that unless you paint that first picture I just said. Hopefully that's an accurate picture. If not, all those answers change. Ivan?
Oh, that's a lot of, let's say, and that question, a lot of things depends on the particular, let's say, use case and like what exactly you want to do in this cloud native environment. I don't think the cloud native defined pretty much everything to allow me to address the question, but overall, cloud native is a huge opportunity for you to introduce the solution that enables here, and they basically don't manage them, but install and forget. They can work and talk with each other, and like you will be surprised how it's good here, specifically with autoscaling and stuff like that. However, it's still on you to find right solutions and like deploy them. And I don't think that we can like help to build like the, in very generic way. Let's start with data. Again, I said it a couple of times. If you will put your data by different buckets and try to find like who's operating with the data, which kind of services, never mind where is they placed in cloud native and not cloud native, just like the new way how to think about, let's say, your operation system, even not even infrastructure or platform, just like the new way of operation system is cloud native. It's very distributed, everything, and like you don't need local files, you have everything distributed and stuff like that. But however, security controls should be almost the same. And by the way, that's why I really like zero trust concept. The zero trust, something very easy to get. However, it works pretty well. And never mind like where you are, you have to apply the same controls everywhere. If it's public API or private API or cloud native stuff, you have to apply exactly the same controls and take care about all the things all together.
Cool.
All right, just scrolling through, and I did at one point see a couple people raise hands. Not sure that functionality in terms of letting you guys speak is enabled. So if you have questions, type them into the chat. Next question, API first, with security at the forefront of code development. But how about on an ongoing basis for API as security requirements evolve? Should there be a check periodically to ensure they are aligned with your current security requirements?
Yes. All right, good. I like that question. So API or not, and let's not even say like product security things or not, let's say corporate, anything, risk management. I'm pretty confident in every single risk management framework that I don't know about right now, there is this constant like cycle of say what you want to be, tie back to risk, deliver it to the doers, and then come back and do it all over again. There's all like every framework tells you to do that. Do we do that? Maybe not like so formally, but I suspect your organization tends to do that because of a couple of reasons. One, turnover causes new people to come in, so you start from the beginning often enough. So that kind of happens. But let's say you don't have that turnover. You maybe do that because as your verification things are happening, like your bug bounties, your pen tests, they start to focus you different places because the risk that motivated your program let you do things well in one area, and then after the fact, you found other areas are now weaker. So the ease of finding things change, and it motivates you to push you around other places. So the first answer is I would say, yes, you should do that and reassess your program regularly and periodically. In fact, I'll say you probably are doing that, even if you don't think you're doing that, because of the nature of us just working. And then that third thing I'll say is you should start to do that more proactively, perhaps, or more interestingly, make it easier for you to do that more proactively. For example, when you write security requirements and you track your security requirements somewhere, put a time on it, like in Jira or wherever you track it, to alert you, like, hey, this thing has been written down for 2 years. Do you want to reassess it? Go look at it. Hey, this regression test that you've deployed has been deployed for 2 years. Do you want to re-look at that regression test? Put timers on all these things. The tests that you deploy, the requirements you put out, the accept. Oh, there's a good one. When you risk accept a vulnerability, make sure you don't have it to not pop back up to you. Anytime you risk a vulnerability, whatever vulnerability management stack or framework you use, put a timer on it to alert you again in 2 years to reassess it. So I would say, to sum it up, yes, you should do that. You're probably already doing that. Becoming better and better at doing that is an ongoing journey. Choose areas that you want to improve first to do that.
Cool. Let me bring up the next question. And actually, this one seems to be more of a development one. As someone who wants to create their own APIs outside of a professional setting, how do you recommend I reinforce API first to my approach or my future endeavors?
Reinforce API first. Probably be cloud native. So
Yeah,
if you're doing it outside of work and you kind of reinforce these concepts, get an AWS account or GCP account. Start with like a Lambda first approach, just like know infra all the things, use all the cloud tools, like just configure them the way the cloud people tell you to do it, so that you can focus on doing the fun API stuff. And then to Ivan's point, choose projects that are forces you to manipulate and mangle data in creative ways, because it's through the manipulation and mangling of data creatively that makes the really, really creative features. But those are the ones that causes the really, really interesting security bugs to kind of manifest. So make sure your toy examples that you're working on are not super toy examples. Make it difficult joins and difficult data problems. And I would say that's probably a good place to start. Ivan?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's a good question there. So you can start with whatever you want, but you actually will get it as good as many challenges you will meet on a journey. So that's a good advice, to try to find as many challenges at early beginning as you can. That's probably how it should be. And by the way, that's why I don't believe in any labs or demo stands or staging environment. And I really believe in some kind of like real use case and real production stuff, specifically when it goes to POCs with the customers and stuff like that. It's
As a quick aside, I was very lucky that my first job out of high school, because I had my CCNA, was to be a voice over IP tech at a small ISP. So for all of high school, I did my CCNA through labs and all the Cisco stuff. I had access to all the cool networking gear, did all the cool configs, but it wasn't until my first week in an environment that had routers in the field configured for customers that I realized what a config is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to work. I didn't learn anything until I got into a production environment. Do it in prod.
Yeah, old-fashioned stuff, right? That's nice. That's nice.
Okay.
I see a question here from Rick. I think it's interesting. Great presentation, John. Can you talk more about the importance of shielding right while you're working simultaneously to lock things down in the design, dev, testing, the left side? The first thing that comes to mind when I see this question is something I'm thinking about actively right now in other threads is I don't like the phrase, it's always cheaper to solve the problem early in the SDLC, or obviously shifting left is a better choice. Like, I don't like that phrasing, because I think we as an industry have gotten to the place to assume that to be the case a lot, but never revisiting why we think it's better. Like, why do we think something shifted left is cheaper to do, more efficient to do, more politically correct to do, is better for humans to do? Like, it's a valid hypothesis to say the discovery of a bug is too difficult shifting left, or it slows down development too much, where in this part of your stack, where letting it go out to production and incentivizing a bug bounty program correctly will make you discover that bug a little faster and know that the frameworks exist to apply to these classes to resolve the bug quicker. Like, I think that's a hypothesis that's worth investigating more. And it's something that I think about when I read this question, at which point shielding right. When I read, I've never heard that term, but now I kind of like it a lot. What I think shielding right, one thing that comes to mind is write a framework that makes authorization checks easy for your developers. That is providing a shield for your developers that can be easy to apply. That's the key. Easy to apply after the fact. Like, if you have a framework that can be applied easily after a mistake, that provides this capability to allow yourself to have something go out to production, discover it after the fact, but remediate really, really quickly. That's a really cool idea now. Now I'm curious to think about that a little bit more.
I'm with you here. I really like the shielding right stuff. And like, by the way, all the time when I heard about the shifting left, specifically like, oh, we have to shift left security. And like my like native reaction on that is like, let's shift left security and knowledge first, and then every single developer will see at least one exploit related to one particular issue. They will be more engaged in the security that you can even imagine. So I personally run more than a couple of hundreds security bugs, and all the time when we provided these reports, including white box reports, I never ever seen developer who said, oh, this is not something interesting to me. All of them said, I never know about that. I want to know about it better. And then significant part of them then start to investigate themselves and become really, let's say, mature security experts after that. And shields on the right means just controls, right? So definitely incident response means shielding rights, and we need this incident response in real time protection stuff and logs everywhere. With cloud native stuff, we can just deliver it easy. We don't need to care about the different requirements on infrastructure and stuff, and just deliver it.
I often champion having my vulnerability management database in organizations as open as possible. Like, lawyers really, really hate when I have that conversation with them, but I like having it easily accessible, always viewable, searchable, where anyone in the org can go and look at it, because I think it's an awesome place to go and incentivize fun learning.
Exactly. And by the way, that's a good idea for IDEs, right? So I know that a lot of folks just hate SAST because it basically stops releases and developers should like check boxes and stuff. But what if we basically can introduce the same pre-checks right inside IDE to help developers not making the code all the time? When you type file open, the stuff will show up, the pop-up, and so you have to care about permissions because your file that you just created just by file open and write access could be basically created somewhere in S3 bucket, and if you will not define 600, technically this file will be accessible. And after that, developer can think about that and easily fix that, instead of like wait till SAST will find the same issue and with 800 different like false positives and stuff. So that's how it should be.
Yeah, teachable moments is something I've talked about also internally around that. It's like, where are the teachable moments that we can hook and then leverage and not annoy? That'd be awesome.
Yep.
All right. Hey, we're at the top of the hour, and I'm pretty sure we're going to time out soon. So, hey, Raj, you want to throw up the last slide one more time?
Yep.
This has all our links, but for all of you on the Zoom webinar, you will be receiving the slides and recording shortly thereafter once we close out and do all the stuff in the system. For, again, those of you watching this on the LinkedIn stream, both myself and Ivan have posted several times the link to this webinar. If you go to our website and sign up, and here it is as well, you'll get the recording and slides as well. That being said, we thank everyone for joining. Definitely go to the website, download as much as you want. We're here for you. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Raj, thank you for your time. As always, super enlightening.
Thank you. Love it.
Thank you, guys. I don't know who dropped this message on LinkedIn, but I want to tell this joke. It's very funny that Pigeon Mail is also cloud native, but there is a nuance. I don't know.
I missed the first part.
The Pigeon Mail
is it
cloud native.
This is true.
Yeah, true. technically they're all in clouds, right? They do exactly, but there is a bit different. That's nice. Okay.
First cloud. Adios all.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, my guys.